you were with us yesterday, you would have seen me interviewing Andy Burnham, and that was a really interesting talk. But tonight we're going to have something a little different, maybe a little relaxed, maybe a bit more intense. I don't know. It depends where you're coming from with these things. But we are going to be looking at maternity services, which is something we don't normally cover on this podcast live stream. So hopefully you'll find it interesting. I'm a little bit biased because I am 7 months pregnant. So when I heard about some of the things that are going on in maternity services, I was really shocked. And it probably shocked me maybe more than it would have normally. I don't know if it probably would have anyway. But I was really, really interested. And I thought, I know we normally talk about purely social care stuff, but there are maternity services within the community, and actually we're really lucky to introduce some of those on the live stream today. So thank you so much for logging on. Don't forget, please share. A lot of you will be watching this back. So just share with your friends, like, and of course, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe and click the bell because you'll get notifications. And if you are watching on Facebook, then like, and just share, get people you know involved if they're pregnant or they're expecting or they've had children and they just want to learn more about maternity services. I'm really pleased with who we've got coming up. So we're starting a little bit earlier today because we're going to go on a bit longer because we have a few people to speak with, and I'm so delighted to have a fantastic panel of guests with us. We're going to start off with Mars. We're going to talk about, I'm not going to take too much away from her because I just want her to talk, but we are going to be talking about doula services, why we need doulas, why they're beneficial, why they're supportive, and why it makes such a difference. And some people will know what doulas are. Some people, that will be a brand new word. So we're going to explore some of that. We're also going to speak to Andrea and her colleague Jackie from the National Midwifery Council, so Nursing and Midwifery Council, NMC, and we'll be exploring some of the things that they're doing to improve maternity services and explore the future for the NMC. And also we'll be talking then with Karen Wintz from the Women's Health and Family Services, and I'm absolutely excited to explore what Karen's got to tell us, because I think we actually kind of only got in touch through word of mouth, and I never knew that family services like this existed, and it's absolutely needed and wonderful, and it's a surprise that they're just not part of every system. And then we'll be going on to speak with Mo from the National Maternity Voices, and actually the partnerships are really, really common, and I just don't think lots of people know about them. So we're going to be exploring all of that. So without messing around and talking too much myself, I'm going to introduce Mars into the stream. Hello, Mars. Good evening. I just need to take you off mute. There we are.
Hi, good to see you all.
How are you today?
I'm good. I've just come out of parents' evening with my twins, my 16-year-old twins. So seeing your face is a welcome relief. You're not going to be talking to me about grades, and you're not going to be talking to me about learning objectives or why we should buy a certain new textbook. So that's making me very pleased.
Oh, good. Oh, well, I'm glad I can be a diversion anyway, because that is just full on, and the whole homeschooling, I don't even want to think about that. I just.
Oh, well, I'm very fortunate. I mean, homeschooling is a completely different beast to the school at home stuff that we're doing right now through the pandemic, but mine are in sixth form, so they're at independent learning stage. So basically it's just not involving me. I'm very happy.
Oh, thank goodness. I can't wait for that. I've got so long to go, but I can't wait for that when you just say, I hand it over to you because you know how to work the machines and the teams. So, oh, well done. But we're going to be going right back now to baby in the womb and all of that.
Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I can't believe I've still got another 2 months to go, but you just get to a point where you're like, baby, just come already. But don't come, because that would be dangerous.
Yeah.
So I know a bit about you, but for anyone who doesn't know about just you as Mars, do give us a little bit of an intro, and then I want to introduce to people the idea of a doula. But yeah,
so I'm Mars, like the planet, not like the chocolate, because I'm not that sweet. I am mother to 5, nonna to 1, Raphael, who's the only name I remember in my family now, because, you know, first grandbaby gets all the attention. I am a doula educator, and a coach. And I am a birth activist. I'm really strong about reproductive justice.
Oh.
Yes. And the only other things that I can tell you that would be of any real interest is I absolutely adore the theatre, love a good Malbec, currently loving a gorgeous black Malbec, and I love a steak dinner. Sorry to the vegans out there.
Have you tried, oh gosh, what's it? Venison steak?
Yes.
You have?
Yeah.
I'd never tried it before, and I picked it up from the supermarket by mistake because it was on sale. And I was running around the supermarket, and my husband, I got home, my husband was like, what is this? And then I told him, oh, it's no beef. And he said, it's not, it's something totally different. And I was really surprised. Delish. I don't know if it's because I'm pregnant and I really love everything like that. Meaty, sorry, vegetarians, vegans.
Yeah, I'm a carnivorous carnivore. You just bring me all the meat stories, that's fine.
But yeah, and so I want to kind of step into this talking about being a doula, and what is a doula, first of all?
Gosh, so it's the easiest way to explain what a doula is that a doula is a professional birth companion. Some of you will remember when the Duchess of Sussex was pregnant, the media said that we held people's hands. And there's a lot more to it than just holding hands. So a doula is someone who gets to know you through your pregnancy. Then when you, a birth doula this is, then when you go into labor, they go with you, they stay with you all the way through, whether it's 4 hours or 44 hours, help you with that initial feed, make sure that all is well with you before leaving you, and then coming back to debrief the birth with you a few days later. That's a birth doula. A postnatal doula, I like to describe as your mum without the politics. So your postnatal doula will come in, make sure that you're nourished, make sure that you're nurtured and you're loved, you're eating, you're drinking, keep an eye on the feeding, etc. And just basically sort of be your, I don't know, cheerleader, confidence boost, someone who believes in you and holds space for you.
I actually never heard of a postnatal doula, so that's really interesting.
Oh, postnatal doulas for the win.
Yeah, really good. Is that a new thing, or is that just been?
I mean, even the words are new, doula, but the custom and the tradition right across the globe, everywhere, is that, you know, the birthing person, the mother, is held up as sacred and nourished and looked after through the pregnancy, through the labor and birth, and afterwards, you know. And I suppose what the pandemic has done is made us all sit still a bit more. But we're so taught to just, you've had a baby, get up, go out, go to baby yoga, baby German, baby French, baby Latin, you know, baby swimming, and that's just Monday morning, right? So that we forget that our bodies have done this huge shift, this huge change, and actually needs time to rest and recover and come back to itself. Ligaments that have stretched out, pelvis, organs, everything that's moved, opened up and moved, all needs to come gently back together. And when we look at the different cultural traditions across the world, we discover that the practices that they use, far from being uncivilized or not how we do it, actually aid in the healing of the post-birth body. And of course, so a postnatal doula is there to sort of take the place of the family that would normally be there in that village way. So they work as part of your family, but their goal is to make sure that you are nourished and loved.
Absolutely. And I think you're so right. In my first pregnancy with my first baby, I was reading Gina Ford, that type of book. And I was thinking that, you know, there has to be a time for everything that I need to do. And it's all down to me. And it was ridiculous, the amount of stuff I went to.
Can you imagine if that's how you maintained your relationship with your partner? I can only hug you at this time. You can only eat at this time. I can only speak to you at that time. It has to be. And yet we do this to babies. We take our little humans and we treat them far worse than we treat ourselves.
It's so true. It's so true. And I remember going to, it was yoga, baby yoga, swimming classes, sing and sign. And yeah, sometimes a lot of them would be on the same day. And then I got pregnant again 6 months later. So I was still doing all of that, breastfeeding and pregnant and running around like a headless chicken. Yeah. And then trying to sleep train like a mad person.
Absolutely. And think of the huge stimulation, overstimulation you're giving the baby when you're doing all of these things, when actually all your baby wants, I mean, it's such a first world problem, but all that your baby wants is to be held and loved and nourished by you. That's all they want. They don't need all the extra things. Not going to lie, didn't do any of those things. Still got the son into one of the top boys' schools in the country, and he still came out with a very good degree. So, you know, word to the wise, do those things if you want to and for the social aspect. But do you know what? Spend some time getting to know your baby and allow yourself to heal and be.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I could just listen to you all night. It's so true. But I want to get on because I'm feeling a bit self-indulgent now because I know people are actually listening in on this to something else people might find interesting. And that is about you're the organization that you work with, Abuelas. Is that right?
Abuela doulas. So I am, Abuela is Spanish for grandmother, because what I do is I train doulas and I teach them to look back at the wisdom of their grandmothers and bring it forward into modern birth, you know. And so that's why I chose Abuela. One, because I love the word. I was always going to be Abuela or Nonna when I became a grandma. So Abuela is my work name and Nonna is what my grandbaby calls me.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to have to tell my cousin because she wants a cool grandmother name. And that's really lovely. So
the reason I train these doulas is because we don't have a lot of representation within the birth world, black and brown faces. So I predominantly, but not exclusively, train black and brown doulas, and I'm really proud to see how many are out there working and doing amazing stuff and caring for and loving so many people.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think that's so true. And we're going to talk about representation and birthing rights in a second, but I also want to come on to a few of you talked about some of the tips and stuff about baby wearing. You know, you're very much into thinking of how we used to do things, how we've complicated birthing and child rearing in today's society, and just really going back to something that's really comes natural to people in different cultures.
And here, I mean, what we do is we behave as though these cultures and traditions are something that came from the African continent or the Asian continent, and they did. But over here in the UK, there's lots of evidence of babies being carried, wrapped in shawls, worn the way that slings are worn now. You had and I can't remember the source, it's just gone straight out of my head. There's a fabulous picture of a load of dads, I think they were Welsh, all baby wearing from years gone by. So these are new things. It's when you find yourself buying a 150, 200 pound sling and you're like, oh, this is amazing, this is such a modern invention. And yet actually this is something that has always been. We've always carried our children. The modern thing is putting them down into prams, putting them down into cots and away from us. But we've always, as societies right across the globe, kept our babies close to us until they're able to do for themselves. Because our babies, sorry folks, are probably, you know, the most vulnerable and weakest within the animal kingdom. Every other animal is born and able, after a short while, to stand and run away from predators. Ours lie there going, oh crap. You know,
yeah,
so that's what I've always told them.
Yeah, yeah. And that's really interesting to say that even, I'm not saying we're even in this country, but sometimes when we things like baby wearing, for example, it's made to seem as something that's exotic, that's going back to some kind of primitive time, that's something that people do abroad. Actually, I don't know why, because if you're saying that this is something that really everybody used to do because it's probably practical, and we've kind of sensationalized it now. But yeah,
I think it was the taking babies, children out of mothers' arms, parents' arms, and putting them into cots and buggies that need to be sold. And, you know, thinking of it as exotic and over there is basically code for, well, we're civilized, we don't do that over here. And that's just not true at all. Because actually, we all did it. But it's about taking the baby away from the parent and giving them to someone else. So we need to create things, design things that allow someone else to take and have the baby. If you're wearing your baby, if your baby is wrapped on you, if you're breastfeeding your baby, you're holding your baby, other people are like, well, what am I going to do? So, you know, and it's about holding that time special and sacred and knowing it's such a tiny moment. My eldest is 28. I keep looking at him, trying to work out how he came out of my womb and grew so big, so quick.
Oh, that's amazing. Gosh. So I want to learn more about your, is it birth activism, did you say? Yeah. Why did you feel like you needed to do something like that? And what is it? What's the purpose?
So it's about representation, making sure that Black and brown people can see themselves in the imagery, in the antenatal sessions, in the maternity service, in the maternity curriculum, etc. But what happened for me was when I first became a doula, because I'm a mother of twins, I was really interested and invested in how twins were born. And so quickly made a name for myself as a twin specialist, a doula that supported lots of vaginal twin births, etc. And whilst I was sort of doing reading around that, I started to see that Black women were twice as likely as white women. So this is a few years ago, twice as likely as white women to die in the perinatal period. Now, the figures of people that die in the perinatal period are really low, but Black people, brown people are disproportionately represented. So I started to do some work around that and started to talk about it. And then suddenly we were 3 times more likely to die. And then we were 5 times more likely to die. Figures have recently come out suggesting that it's now down at 4, and therefore it's not, therefore we're doing something great. But actually, we've changed the way we classify race and things. And so, and the figures lag behind by a few years. And the most shocking thing for me, which is why activism is so important, is if your ethnicity isn't recorded for whatever reason, you're recorded as white. So that can, yes, I was reading this and I was going, wait, I'm just going to change my glasses and read that again. So birth activism is really important because Black and brown women and birthing people are dying at a disproportionately high rate. So remember, the rate of maternal mortality is low, but within that rate, we are disproportionately represented. It's too high. You know, I'm talking, yes, well, you need to see representation. This is not the kind of representation I mean, you know, and it has nothing to do with money, education, and predisposed conditions, because actually, when we discovered that babies born to mothers who smoked were low in birth weight, we made sure to educate everybody about that. If we know, or we think we know, that Black women are more likely to have hypertension and obesity, diabetes, etc., and let's look at the microaggressions of society that's gotten them to that place, the high stress and cortisol levels before they got pregnant, you know. So a yoga class isn't gonna cut it, but it would, you know, useful to do as well. Why are we not honing in on this and saying, right, we need to make sure that when we're talking to our Black and brown parents, that they understand this. We need to look into their cultural foods and things, and rather than telling them they can't eat their cultural foods, we need to find out why those foods don't seem to work as well as over here. Because if you or I were born in the African continent, born and raised there, we would have a much better rate of survival than we do being raised and living and birthing here in the West. So this is where my passion comes from, because we deserve to do more than just survive. We deserve to thrive. And what's lovely to see is that there are different people starting to sort of come together and say, okay, what can we do to stop Black and brown women dying at such rates? And what we need to be focusing in on just now is the near misses, and making sure that they don't merely survive birth, but they do well in birth, and we don't have a whew, almost lost that one moment. So there we go. There's a little snippet as to why this is so important to me. And I'm a mother of 5 children. I have 3 daughters, and I want my 3 daughters and their babies to survive and thrive. And if my sons have children, you know, if all my daughters have children, my sons have children, I want their children to thrive and survive, and their partners to thrive and survive too. So that's why I'm an activist.
Ah, wonderful. And so much of what you said just rings true with research. I know Professor Williams, David Williams from Harvard University. I heard about him because he talks about health inequalities. And he does say about, you know, the structural inequalities in society, and how there's so much research now coming out to say how it affects the chemicals within your body. Yeah. Then gives people lots of long-term illnesses. Seeing it happen in COVID now. And I don't know if my lovely colleague Tobias can find, we did have something about women, Black women, I think, are more likely to be admitted to hospital with COVID, who are also pregnant. Yeah, at the moment, so 8 times more likely to be admitted to hospital. So which is just crazy. Thank you, Tobias. So there's so much to what you're saying, and also even things that I've been craving with food, callaloo. So I'm not great.
Healthy,
right? So I never even thought about. I'm not great with Caribbean food because I've been like brought up with like this palate in the UK, and my mum was just too busy working to cook, and so but he's like religiously, he'll just pop food outside the door every week for us. So callaloo and plantain as well. Kind of foods that yams. I just
like Usain Bolt said, the reason he ran so fast is the hard food.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. It's crazy. So much of it rings true, I think. But in your experience, because obviously we've got these terrible stats, but what do you see as some of the, or what you've heard as being a doula, some of the things that have just happened and you think that just should not be happening?
We know that Black women are traditionally, societally ignored, silenced and erased. When a Black woman speaks up, she's accused of aggression, she's accused of being troublesome, she's accused of bullying, etc. Now take that into the birthing space, or have your Black partner say to the midwife, and this is something that happened just recently, you're not listening to my wife, she's trying to tell you something. If you talk to me like that again, I'm calling security and you're out. So what is it? I'm not saying that every midwife and every doctor behaves badly, but that there are more than enough of them that do. The medical curriculum needs looking at. We don't even know how to diagnose things according to different skin shades. A simple example, for example, in breastfeeding, do you have a red rash on your breast? Because that will let me know if you have thrush. Well, I've looked at my breasts for many years and I don't see red patches. So simple things like that, implicit bias, unconscious bias, sometimes explicit as well. So it's about recognizing that the person in front of you is an individual person. I've heard midwives in handover say derogatory things about Black and brown women in different rooms. I once went to a private hospital. My client called me back because the midwife was treating her so badly. He was white, she was Asian, that they just wanted me to spend the whole day with them, simply protecting her from this midwife. That's not the sort of stuff that should happen. So as well as the predispositions, as well as all of the reasons that we look for the disparity, We have to lift up that uncomfortable mirror and say, okay, we need to start practicing cultural humility and safety and learning about people and loving people.
Absolutely. And in terms of if you were to tell sort of like, so basically the inspiration that I got for this live stream really, as I kind of fell across the statistics for maternity services in the UK, and we've got one here from this. It was the CQC, the Care Quality Commission report, and I read those for like my job and social care and stuff. And they do a state of care report, and every year they publish it. And this one, I don't know if it was the first time they did it or the first time I've really taken notice, but it was there was a report about maternity services and how they were rated. And I think a quarter of them needed were like requires improvement. And within like social care, adult social care services to do with care, that would be a really, really shocking if that was across like care services or anything else. So I was like, I can't believe that's not even a massive big issue. So what I wanted to dig down. So if you were to kind of be advising people who either inspect or run maternity services, what would you be saying to them that they need to concentrate on to just improve the situation for pregnant mothers? And I think probably it's worse for people of colour, but maybe people who are from the UK, who are white, are still having similar sort of issues. I don't know, but what would be...
Well, so I have a limited amount of time to talk to you. So thinking about the things that I would advise, like how do you sort of bring that down? I think we need to take a look at the way we treat people. I think actually we have to start with how we train our staff. I think we need to look at the way we train our midwives and our doctors. I think we need to, and I think with all ethnicities, this is important, but we need to not go to the default, and the default neutral is white, and not all skins are white. So we need to be able to recognize things on them. We need to learn to listen. We need to learn to listen. And when we listen, we need to hear, because listening is a gift that you give to people. You give them the gift of you listening, and they give you the gift of their words, and we should listen to them. We should believe them. You know, and then we should start to make changes. And I think change comes from the bottom up and the top down. And I don't think that the people that we should ask what to do to change things, I don't think those are the people who are being oppressed, or the people who are the sad statistics that we talk about. Because I can't tell you how to dismantle and change a system that benefits you and punishes me.
That is so powerful. That is really powerful. And you kind of put a lot into sort of 60 seconds, to be honest. So well done, you.
A little bit passionate about this, just a little bit.
Yeah, wonderful. I'm definitely going to be isolating that clip and sharing and resharing it. That was really useful. I'm just going to check in case there is, yeah, nothing too much on the questions, but I think we've got your details we've been sharing. And I know you coach doulas, so if anyone's thinking about being a doula, then get in touch with your organisation. And it's just been such a pleasure talking to you and listening to you. I'm so glad we opened up with you as well, because it's just so heartwarming and positive as well to know that there's somebody who gets it and is helping you in such an important way. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. I wish you a really peaceful birth.
Oh, me too. Thank you.
Drop me a line and let me know.
Yes, I will. I'll send I'll put lots of baby photos up on my socials as well. I'm sure I will. But yes, take care, Mars. Thank you.
Bye-bye, Sophie. Bye-bye.
Lovely. So that was Mars Lord. Do get in touch with her and follow her and her organisation. I don't know if we can pop up again her overlay of where she works. There we are. That's just something from her website. So yes, Abuela, please do have a look. There's some really lovely things on there. So I am going to get on with introducing our next guests. So really excited to have both Andrea and Jackie with us from Nursing and Midwifery Council. So I will bring them into the stream. Welcome both. Hello.
Hi, Sophie.
Hi.
How are you this morning? Sorry, you can see baby brain. I'm going to blame that on baby brain. It's just gone 12. Sometimes you say that when it's like a 1 minute past 12. It's like nearly bedtime. Oh. Anyway,
having the kind of day that I've been having, Sophie. We're fine. Thank you very much.
Good. Glad we got that one out of the way. So I think probably the best way to start is to tell people what the NMC is and what its role is. So I don't know who wants to start that off. Yeah.
Shall I do that? So so thank you so much, Sophie, for inviting us along, and also for the privilege of listening to Mars just now, who was absolutely fantastic, wasn't she? So what the Nursing and Midwifery Council is, we are the regulator for nurses, midwives and nursing associates in the whole of the UK. And there are 725,000 of all of them, but there's just over 31,000 are midwives in England and 38,000 overall across the UK. And what we do from a regulatory point of view is we set the standards for the education for midwives as well as nurses and nursing associates. So some of the things that Mars was just talking about in terms of how do we train our midwives, the responsibility for those standards rests with us, and we can talk about that a little bit more because we've been doing some really good work on that recently. We also set the code of conduct, which we expect in terms of the way that nurses and midwives and nursing associates behave. And that also is really, really important and links to what Mars was just talking about in terms of how we treat people and our expectations around all of that. So we set those standards, and then we keep a register of people, registered midwives who are on our register and can practice as a midwife. And you have to be on our register to be able to practice as a midwife in the UK. We support midwives through their revalidation. We expect them to do every 3 years to reflect on their practice and to have feedback on all of those good things. And if there are issues that are raised with people in terms of their practice, then we will look into that, both in terms of the way that they might have behaved or how they've their clinical practice or anything like that. What we also try to do is we try to support our professionals on the register by providing guidance and information about how they can deliver on those standards. And we're also providing support to the public, because actually fundamental to what we are here for is to protect the public by promoting those high professional standards. So we really need to be working with the public as well. And if we regulate well and if we support people well, then we can use the information that we get from all of that to influence the way that care is delivered, the environments in which midwives and other professionals are working across the health and social care system. So it's a big old job, lots of different aspects to it, and lots of it resonates with what Mars was just talking about and what I'm sure you'd be really interested in hearing about as we go through our conversation, Sophie.
Lovely, thank you, Andrea. And I want to introduce Jackie as well and your role.
Hello. Hi there, I'm Jackie Williams, and I'm one of the senior midwifery advisors at the NMC. And I'm a practicing midwife. I still have my foot in clinical practice as well as working full-time at the NMC. I sit in professional practice, which is an interesting directorate because that is where the standards really were developed. But importantly, we actually advise on midwifery matters across the NMC. And importantly, to make sure that midwifery is seen as this separate autonomous profession, and that we acknowledge that in all the work that we do.
Right. So there's quite a bit there that you actually have a remit around. But also, I'm sure there's a lot that you can't control, if you like. And one of the things being COVID. So I'm interested to understand what the pressures are at the moment for midwives during COVID and how things have had to change. There we go. There's your website, just if people want to go and have a bit of a nose and find out more. And also how people can log concerns. It's good to see that's on the main part of your website, on the main banner. That's really good. So yeah, what have been the pressure for midwives and mothers at the moment that you're hearing? Maybe Andrea, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so I'll kick off and then Jackie can. There's been lots of issues, I think, for midwives across the country because, and it's, listening to what Mars and yourself were talking about, Sophie, what do we want to do? We want to support women to have a great birth experience. We want their partners to be with them. We want that connection between mother and baby and the rest of the family. Yet we're in a world where social distancing has become the norm. And that has been a real challenge in maternity services. So enabling partners to be there when you're having your scans and all of those kind of things. It's been, that some of those things have been really, really challenging, and trying to maintain safety within the maternity service and ensuring, again, that people have got the support that they need, but that we're not exposing mothers and babies and indeed staff to risk. And just like any other bit of the health and social care system, our professionals, our midwives, have been affected by COVID themselves. So we've had people who have been ill. We've had people who have been really badly ill. And that has a real impact on the multidisciplinary team. So, do we have enough midwives anyway? Probably not. We would love to have more. But when you've got a whole bunch of people who are sick as well, then you've got real pressure on the service. So we've had midwives kind of coping with some really tricky and difficult situations because the women that they're supporting have been coping with some really difficult and tricky situations. And particularly thinking about what Mars was talking about there and some of the inequalities and the challenges that people have had. If you think about the rising incidence of domestic abuse, which, very, very sadly, we have seen during this last period of time, midwives in their interaction with women have a critical role to play in that safeguarding and support. So much more difficult when you're doing it on a Zoom call because you're not going into people's homes. So there's lots of very practical issues as well as the clinical ones as well. So I don't know, Jackie, given that you're out there as well, whether there's other things that you'd say too.
Yes, and I think that women were genuinely very frightened. And I think there was initially it was seen that perhaps women didn't come into have contact with their midwives as early as they should. And of course, services had to keep changing, and some had to be withdrawn, and then had to be. So I think that there was I can fully understand how women and their families, were very concerned. I think there's sort of less of that now, because I think the picture is around the country is different, and of course, but the bottom line, of course, is that the service still has to be delivered because women are still coming in having babies. And we've all been half expecting a rise in the birth rate with all these lockdowns. That hasn't quite materialised, but you never quite know what's around the corner. And for us, what was really quite disappointing is just before lockdown, the first one in last March, we launched our new standards. And we were so excited about this because we firmly believe this is going to have an impact, not just on midwives and how they are educated, but that will then translate into transforming the care that women will receive. And of course, we were trying to do a whole host of work, and all of that sort of slightly paused. But interestingly, that is actually gaining momentum, gaining speed. So midwives are already on those new programs. More will start next September. And I think that is just fantastic and all testament to the universities who educate our midwives, because they are engaging with women and families to develop their new curricula, and as well as the practice partners, the people delivering the service. They have to do that as a co-production all together. So the fact that they've managed to be agile to get back to do that is really, really important, because we recognise within these standards that it is going to make a difference. Particularly, yeah, sorry, Sophie.
Yes, I want to just cut in there before you, because I'd like to learn a bit more about the standards. But firstly, I'd like to say, you know, I'm really sorry, but I think you might have a baby boom coming soon, to say. Only because I was talking to my own midwife, and she said they've got a 30% increase in appointments, she calls them. Yeah. But I think, yeah, so I think maybe there is something coming down the line. Not necessarily a bad thing, but obviously it is difficult times. And totally appreciate that, you know, if you're already starting with pressures and things you want to improve, and then you throw in there a national, international pandemic, it's just really, really hard. It is nice to see that there are community groups out there, but it isn't the same to having sort of face-to-face consultations and support there. But I want to just look at, and I think this is the right overlay. Yes, so like I said, it was a CQC report that kind of gave me the inspiration, and these are some of the things that were in that report. And they said that for maternity services, so one of them, we continue to see that some services where staff didn't have the right skills and knowledge, the poor working relationships between obstetricians, midwives, and neonatalists. I don't even know how to say that. You can read it. And there was limited oversight of risk and a lack of investigation and learning when things go wrong. So that's where we were starting between 2019 and 2020. And then might as well cover this one as well. The quality of maternity services barely changed, with at least 1 in 4 rated as requires improvements. That's what I was talking about before. So bearing that in mind, I'm guessing that you're already aware of all of that, and that's what your new standards were hoping to address. So do you want to now talk a little bit more about what's coming down the line, giving people a bit of hope about the changings that are happening, and also that you're well aware of what needs to be done? Andrea, did you want to start us off with that?
So if I start with the big picture, and Jackie is the one who knows the standards inside out, so can pick up that side of things. But I think you're absolutely right to highlight those issues, Sophie. And yesterday I was sat in this seat being questioned about maternity safety by the Health and Social Care Select Committee at the House of Commons, because they're conducting an inquiry at the moment looking at what's happening in maternity services, and looking at the other report that came out last year, which was really important, which was Donna Rockenden's report in what's been happening at Shrewsbury and Telford. And the problem, I think, is that there's we know what works well in maternity services. We know that if you've got the right midwives with the right skills in the right place, then you're going to have a good service. We know that if you've got continuity of carer and care, that delivers a safe outcome for women and their babies. We know that if midwives are working in a positive, multidisciplinary environment where there's mutual respect between everybody in that team, and that they're empowered to speak up when things go wrong, all of those kinds of things, that is a good environment, and that's when we get safe care. And critically, and it's really interesting because Mars said exactly the same thing, if women are listened to, then we have safe care. That's absolutely critical. And the problem is we don't have all of those conditions consistently across the country. And we need to be using our voice to be highlighting those problems and to be encouraging them to be addressed. And a very important way that we do that is by setting those standards for midwives. And the key thing that I wanted to convey to the committee yesterday was how important getting those future midwife standards embedded in education is, but it's also really important to embed them in practice. and make sure that our existing midwives are working with them. So, you know, that's the vision. That's where we want to get to. And Jackie can give you a little bit of a detail on what, you know, some of the issues are that we're trying to address there, because I personally think that they, you know, I didn't write them, so I can say this. I think they're fabulous. I think they absolutely are the cornerstone for safe care. And the more that we can get them out there and the more that we can get them implemented, the better.
Before I go on to Jackie, can I just, and Jackie, if you, because I know we've really got a few more minutes left, maybe just pick out a couple that you think are really relevant to discuss. But I wonder whether, and that's why it's really important for me to hear what your remit is, whether some of the reasons why the system and the experiences can be the way they are is also to do with the system. So if you have, for example, appointments that are billed at 10 minutes each, and midwives can literally only do so much, they're also under pressure. And I know sometimes when you have appointments with any clinician, really, you almost feel like their mind is half looking at the clock. And you know you've got to get through stuff and you almost don't want to say everything. Because I recently got involved with a session where hypnobirthing, and we did it online. We did it last weekend. And it was just such a different experience to all the appointments I've had up till now. I had to pay for it. And I think you can get money to pay if you can't afford it. But I think something like that should just be offered to everyone as a standard, because I really got time to sit and listen and think and express what I wanted. It was very holistic. And they were saying things that people like Mars, I think, would agree with, you know, trust your intuition. When do you ever hear a clinician say to anyone, well, just trust your, if you feel that's what you want, just trust your intuition? Nobody really says that. And it was really refreshing. But yeah, the real question is, do you think it's sometimes more to do with the system and the way we do things than individual midwives?
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the things that we are really, really conscious about, is the context within which midwives are working. You know, do they have the senior leadership that's got the voice for midwifery and maternity services at the board level, so that they've got the resources that they need so they can give that time? Because we absolutely know that listening to the woman, giving her the time, the space, the information, so that she can make the right decisions for her with her midwife, just so important. And you cannot do that if you're being so pressurized. So I think you're absolutely spot on, Sophie. And we need to use our voice around what we can see works to push for those changes as well.
Lovely, thank you. Just a minute, really, Jackie. Sorry, I've gone on to.
No, you're fine. I mean, I think the important thing is that these new standards are based on high quality evidence, not just national but international. They're based on a framework which our lead advisor, Professor Mary Renfrew, was very heavily involved in, which talks about the role of the midwife for all women. So irrespective of those needs. So women who perhaps have less complexities, but absolutely those that do. So that midwife provides that care, and importantly, continuity of care. And so we've actually supported those national agendas by having a whole domain all about continuity of care, so that midwives at the point of registration will be able to work in that way. And of course, in a way, that's aligning to how maternity services are moving. And that's really, really encouraging. And I think the only other thing that I particularly wanted to highlight was the importance of enabling and advocating the views, preferences and decisions of women and partners. And they may not be the decisions that perhaps we would advise or perhaps within the guidance, but they're their decisions, and they need all the information to make that decision and be supported in that decision. So that's really, really important as well.
And it's really interesting that you have talked about listening to people, because in a few minutes' time, we'll have Mo from National Maternity Partnerships and National Maternity Voices. And I didn't know this until I had a quick prep call with her the other day, that those national maternity partnerships are within all, I think, of the maternity services. And I did Google it, and I did find that I've got one locally, but I didn't know that, and I don't know, maybe it was in the paperwork somewhere, but I don't feel like it was. But maybe there just needs to be awareness that actually there is some really good stuff out there, and things like that. And that's directly people are able to, you know, cutting out the researchers and the universities, you're able to tell people what needs to change. So maybe there needs to also be some kind of awareness, and even, like I said, the hypnobirthing that I went on, that was kind of discretionary. If the midwife you have thought that it was a good idea to slip that into your pack, then you got it. If you, it's not mandatory. So yeah, there's things like that. I think, you know, we give ourselves a hard time, but there's actually some really good stuff out there that we just maybe need to create more awareness of.
And I think that's absolutely right, Sophie. And I think the key thing here is about giving women information so that they can make an informed choice which is right for them, and that midwives, I mean, midwife means with the woman, you know, that's what the word actually means, and it's actually making sure that midwives are able to do that. And also, one of the things that we've been really clear about in the standards and in our code of conduct is responding to some of the things that Mars was talking about around the different needs that women have from different communities. And it's absolutely essential that midwives are indeed trained from a very early stage to be thinking about that, to be competent and understanding those issues, so that they're not fazed by, you know, what happens or the different questions that they might guess or the different suggestions, but they're able to work with women to support them so that they can have the, you know, a safe outcome, because that's what we want, happy and safe, healthy mother and baby, but that they can also have a really good experience. Because, you know, your experience of birth, I've never been lucky enough myself, but I know this from my sister and others, your experience of birth lasts you for a lifetime. And we've got to make sure that it's the best it possibly can be.
Absolutely. And it lasts you, and it lasts the child as well. So yeah, 100%. It's a big thing, and I'm glad you brought that up. And the only last comment I'm thinking about is the community. Every community, I know, I'm in Bristol, it has it's so vibrant and lots of different cultures. And I'm conscious of putting a lot of effort and a lot of emphasis on this individual midwife to get it right. Maybe we just need to link that person up with places in the community that could help a woman of different ethnicities. So it's not all on her to know every single culture or every single way of working, but be open to signposting people or inviting them in to give guest talks to local maternity trainees or whatever, and just having that link. I think that would make everyone feel a little less nervous about all of this, because it's a lot. But,
so I just wanted to say quickly that obviously many midwives already work in this way. You know, our standards were woefully out of date. We articulate what our expectation is very clearly now in a contemporary way, as well as evidence-based. And I think the other thing is that we've broadened our definition of what safety is. That absolutely it is the physical safety, but it's about ensuring the mental health safety, spiritual, cultural safety of women and their families. So that's very, very important. But I think for the first time, we've got standards that really bring all this together and really emphasize. And of course, what Andrea was talking about is, of course, service needs to support that development, so that midwives are not just have the knowledge and the skills and the attributes, but they're enabled to work in this way.
Lovely, thank you. That's a good hope amongst all of the issues in that report from CQC and others as well. So thank you for all that you're doing, and thank you so much for spending your time tonight with us. It's been really lovely hearing from you. Okay, take care both.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm off on a point there. So yeah, that was really, really good, and actually quite positive. I was a bit worried with this stream, because we're talking about so many different issues, that it would be a little bit depressing and worrying. but it's so nice to, sorry, I have got a cough. It's not COVID related. I say this every stream, but it gets worse the bigger I get. So yeah, and I mean, they're doing some really good work and they seem to get it and understand the issues. So hopefully more will change. And it's lovely to hear that people are so inspired by what Mars had to say. So we are getting there. We have got another guest to bring in. I think they're having connection issues. So what I will do, I'm going to play a video. Now, this is a little bit depressing, but it's interesting because we mentioned the Ockenden report earlier, and I don't know if we can bring up the overlay of the title page of that. But that was a report that was published, and I think there was a lot of work done on that. There was a lot from the Health and Social Care Select Committee. I think it was also interviewed people about that. And there was a video from one of the people who had bad experiences, and also kind of like championing the idea of improving maternity services. So I am just going to play that, and then we will invite our next guest, Karen Wint.
They're really deeply affected by the disparity that we're seeing. Delissa Parks unfortunately passed away in 2015, giving birth to her daughter, and I will now read some words from her mother, Sylvia. The doctor informed me that it was normal for baby's head to be high and free due to the fact that Black women's pelvises were shaped differently. He held on to his truth at the inquest into her death, but this was addressed by the coroner, who advised that this was unsafe. I will always maintain that her death could have been prevented if she was taken seriously when she attended the hospital on the day before she died and was sent home. I'm not a medical expert, but I'm her mum. Sylvia is the guardian and full-time carer of Delissa's daughter, Soraya, who was born with multiple complications due to the nature of her birth. Shamika Dockery ended up with retained placenta that wasn't detected until 11 days after giving birth to her son. She went to seek help from health professionals on numerous occasions. Her midwife said that she was sweating through bed sheets at night because she was breastfeeding. Her GP said that she was in pain because everything was stuck together. And when she finally did get help in the hospital, she was told she couldn't receive surgery straight away because her head wasn't falling off, even though she was taken to hospital in an ambulance. Shamika now has to live with chronic abdominal, hip and leg pain, which has affected her life and her relationship with her son, even to this day, 7 years after she's given birth. These stories are just a small example of what it is like to give birth as a Black woman in the UK. Why the campaign? I am showing my age here, but looking back at the previous confidential inquiries into maternal death, before it was called Embrace, we see that as early as 1991, when my mum gave birth to me, she had a higher risk of dying as a Black woman. They just didn't know just how much because data on ethnicity was not previously collected in the UK. Over the years, we see that gap widening, and we see that Black women are overrepresented among the deaths. The Embrace report in 2018 mentioned that action was needed to address this disparity. This is a consistent issue which we believe has been worsening over the years.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop it there because we've got Karen. But yeah, I just wanted to play that anyway, if we had time, just to show that the experiences really of some people. And it's good to hear that those are recognised now and people are starting to address it. But without further ado, I'm going to invite Karen Wintz to the live stream. Hello, good evening, Karen. How are you today?
I'm good. Hi, Sophie. How are you?
Not bad. Suffering with this cough. It's really annoying, but I'm going to try and get through it. I've just had to miss it. So.
You're doing really well with it. And I have to say, I'm absolutely loving your earrings.
Thank you. It's actually a local lady who makes these in Bristol, and she uses the African print fabrics. So yeah, thank you. So you are a CEO of Women's Health and Family Services. Now I know a bit about them, but can you introduce what you do and where you're based?
Absolutely. We are a women's health organisation based in East London. Our home is Tower Hamlets. And 40 years, exactly this year, a group of local women set us up because they wanted to address the health inequalities that they felt they were experiencing and the women in their local communities were experiencing. They didn't feel they were getting the access to maternity services that actually met their needs. And it's interesting that 40 years later, we're still having this conversation, and, you know, all your other guests have really been, you know, done a fantastic job this evening with highlighting so many of the important issues. And the young lady that was just on your film, which was just so incredibly moving, you know, is absolutely right. We have had numerous reports, numerous research studies. We don't need any more of that. We actually now just need action to make things better for women who, so, you know, very often are not heard and sometimes not seen in the case of the women that we support. So we run a program called Maternity Mates, and that program was set up to provide support to women who are rarely heard, rarely seen, or sometimes rarely listened to in terms of what their needs are. And we believe very passionately that every woman should have a good experience of pregnancy and the early, you know, time of when her baby arrives. And that should not be a postcode lottery. And not everyone has family around them or has extended networks of support. There are many women who will find themselves on their, you know, on their own. For lots of different reasons. You know, they may have experienced domestic violence or experienced a trauma. There may be issues with their families. We support lots of women who have made, you know, a really difficult journey across numerous countries to get here to seek refuge. And when they get here, they don't necessarily speak English very well, are, you know, support systems are so difficult to navigate that very often they just feel on their own. And what we do through Maternity Mates is we're, you know, really fortunate to have amazing women in our local communities who want to give something back, want to, you know, give their time to support women who actually need that little extra support along their journey. So every year we will train anywhere between 40 and 60 local women to become a maternity mate. And then we will carefully match them with a woman who's been referred to us either through the maternity services, or they may have self-referred, or another organization may have referred them to us. And a relationship develops between those two women. And it's a relationship that is very natural. It's non-judgmental. It's one where the maternity mate will stand alongside that woman for whatever she needs. You know, if it's emotional support she needs, then that's what the maternity mate will do. If she needs practical support, she'll help her as much as she possibly can to navigate housing or the Home Office or any of the other agencies around, and also just help her to sort of connect with others in her local community or a children's centre or somewhere like that. And really importantly, if the mum-to-be would like the maternity mate to be there during labour, our maternity mates will spend that time with that mum during that very special moment that is both probably one of, you know, being anxious as well as being excited that, you know, you're about to welcome your baby into the world. And, you know, they will hold her hand during that time. And also, you know, once she's had the baby, they will then help her with whatever she might need. And many of the moms that we support may not have everything they need for their baby. So it'll be about helping them to access baby banks during this COVID period, food banks, and all those sorts of things. So yeah, so that's what we do.
Wow, you do so much and such incredible. I was speaking to you and speaking to Mars. It's almost like I'd like to merge your roles together and make them statutory. That would be lovely for me. So what I want to hear more about is, well, a couple of things. I want to know, firstly, how it has changed in the pandemic. What are the new issues that you're being tasked with, or that women are finding or helping people with, or is it just more of what you would normally do?
Oh, it's a lot more than we would normally do. And I think, you know, as women, you know, we have that instinct of nurturing and caring for another woman. And so, you know, the team that actually make this happen, as well as the volunteers, the maternity mates, have really been going that, you know, extra mile to support women. And it's been really difficult because it means that women are more isolated. We know that more women are actually declaring domestic violence that might be occurring in their lives. So, you know, we know that there are those issues, and the lockdown has really, in some ways, you know, trapped, you know, women and their families in really sort of small, sometimes not particularly, you know, great places, you know, to be spending, you know, every hour of the day in, and then having to cope with their own homeschooling, etc. So there's a lot of pressure on those women, and it's been really difficult. So what we did, and what we set about what to do, was actually what can we practically do to really make them feel less scared. And I think Andrea and Jackie touched on that during COVID, you know, women were really scared about going into hospitals, and we certainly saw that. We managed to raise some funding where we could organize a taxi for them just to go to and from their appointments. You know, something just as simple as what we might take as a simple act actually might be a little bit more difficult for them, because it's not necessarily something that they can afford. And, you know, just trying to get them food deliveries so that they didn't have to go out, because they really were quite scared about going out with their young children during the pandemic. And we, because of our close working relationship with the maternity services, and I have to say that the maternity services in East London really bent over backwards to ensure that our maternity mates, and actually our staff very often, to step in and support women during labour, because we didn't want women giving birth on their own. So, you know, about how do we do that? And so we provided all our volunteers and obviously members of the team with all the necessary PPE equipment, and, you know, ensuring that they were able to travel safely, so that they could go into hospitals and accompany women during labour, because that was just so incredibly important. And I know right at the beginning of the first lockdown, I think after a couple of months, Selena, who works in our team, I think she had accompanied 12 women to give birth over a period of like 8 or 9 weeks, which was pretty, you know, pretty incredible. And I think what was really humbling was to see members of the team and the maternity mates who went out there to support women, went into the hospitals, and didn't even once give a second thought about how might this affect me if I do, you know, come down with COVID? That was just a second thought, you know, that was just never an issue. And that was incredibly, you know, humbling. And I think just shows how passionate we all are about supporting those who just need that little bit of extra help.
It's just incredible what you're doing and the help that you're giving people. And I also think it's interesting to hear how much people do struggle in this period. You know, thinking about all the things that they need to, the basic things that they need to do, and to go out and find, be accompanied. And it's, I think society is just so broken up, different sectors, and people who have a lot of support maybe just don't realise that some people really struggling and need services like yours so much.
Absolutely. I mean, we had one mum who, you know, a recent refugee, gave birth and was living on £37 a week, didn't have any heating in her flat. So when, you know, she went back home with her baby, you know, we were all sort of thinking, oh my gosh, you know, we need to get her a heater. And actually somebody who was supporting her, you know, was around at her place in a flash with, you know, a heater. But that is what women are experiencing. And that's why we do what we do, because they should not be ignored and they should not be forgotten. And they should be listened to. And I think that's the word that keeps coming up on all of your interviews. It's about listening, but listening not just for the sake of it and then forgetting it, listening to what they're actually saying is just so important to bringing about change.
Absolutely. I'm interested, how are you funded? Do you have to go out and crowdfund? How do you keep going?
So we are in a good position in that the local commissioning services in East London saw what we were doing. We ran a pilot about 9 or 10 years ago, and they liked what we were doing, and so actually made that bold step to commission our services. And it has grown over that period of time. So we started out in Tower Hamlets, and we're now in Newham and Waltham Forest. And with their financial support, we've been able to really develop the program, and it's very different from where it was when it first started. And, you know, going back to that word of listening, that's what we do a lot of, because we need to constantly ensure that the relationship that we're offering women actually does meet their needs and is actually changing as things change as well. And that's, you know, really important. And listening also to our volunteers, you know, the women who are our maternity mates have an enormous amount to contribute to what it is that we do and how we do it.
And I think that it's more, you say it's just about listening, but I think it's so much more. Listening is huge, but I'm very conscious of saying we tend to put things in little brackets. Well, midwives do this and somebody else will do something else. And this, I just think that if it's a commissioning authority that's got you involved, I think there should be something that across the board, there should be your type of organisation in every maternity service, where then people can get referred to. I don't think there should be a voluntary, crowd-funded type of thing, because birth and birth experiences from just before conception to you know, development in the womb to very early years, your journey there, those few years will affect that individual adult when they become, and the mother's life going forward. So I think we just need to invest more in providing services like yours, because I just think they are so crucial. And, you know, all I can say is thank you for doing the work that you do, because I think it's wonderful. I really do. And it just makes me sad that we don't do it more and we don't have it as like a standard everywhere. But what I would say is kind of out of time, and I could talk to you for another 5-10 minutes. And I'm sorry we came to you a little bit late, but is there anything that you really want to get in before we lose you?
Probably a couple of things. So I think, first of all, anyone listening to this, watching this, if you live in East London and you think you would like to be a maternity mate, get in touch with us. And I think the other thing that I would like to say is I found what Andrea and Jackie were saying was really positive to listen to in terms of the steps they're taking. And I think one of the other things that I would say is whether they can somehow ensure that student midwives maybe experience a role such as maternity mates. Because if you understand as a maternity mate what it is to support a woman who doesn't have access to networks, is isolated, has experienced trauma, etc., then you're going to take that learning through into your career as a midwife. And I think if you can understand and learn about that really early on in that educational period, I think that would be fantastic. And because we do get many midwifery students joining us because that's exactly what they want to do. They want to learn and they want to give something back. So that would be the other point I would make. And I may get in touch with Andrea and Jackie and get them to come along and do a talk to our maternity mates.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. And I'm sure they'd be open to it. Andrea's lovely like that. So thank you for that. Well, yeah, thanks for joining us. And that was wonderful to hear from you. Every time I talk to you, when your representatives, I'm just always filled with such admiration for what you do. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you so much, Sophie.
Take care. Bye-bye. So there you go, another inspirational guest. I was really thinking that I'd overdone it with this live stream, having it an hour and a half. I thought that's ridiculous. But look at it, we're running late, so we might have to dip over. I don't know if Mo can stay on, but it's fine if she can't. Okay, so I'll bring Mo into the stream. Hello, Mo. How are you? Well, 1 minute, let me unmute you. My clicker's a little bit too slow. Oh, I think if you might need to take out your headphones, it says your, there we are. I think we can hear you now. Okay. Perfect. So welcome, Mo. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Lovely.
Thank you for joining us this evening. And you're from the National Maternity Voices, and I was lovely to catch up with you earlier to learn about your organisation. I had no idea that we'd have something like the National Maternity Partnerships everywhere. So I'd like you to just first explain what the organisation is and what pregnant women can expect from the work that you do.
Okay, thank you for having me on. The National Maternity Voices is the organization that links all the maternity voices partnerships in each hospital on a local basis. So the National Maternity Voices links together the service user chairs of all the local maternity voices partnerships. So we link them together to support them to network, support them in setting up the MVP and developing it. And also we represent them on a national basis. And MVPs are, as I sort of said to you before, you will find them in every hospital. You should find them in every hospital. They're local. And they basically bring together all the people who use the service, women and their families, it brings together NHS staff, so midwives and obstetricians and just different staff, and indeed representatives from the community as well who represent service users, and it brings them all together to work together in a multidisciplinary way to shape the maternity service and develop it to serve local needs. So it's all about listening to how service users are experiencing the service, identifying what is working well, what needs to work better, and then working together to co-produce all the things that needs to be better so that the maternity service at each local point serves those who use it very well.
I was just trying there to see if I could share my screen with people to show them, because what I found is that if you Google the National Maternity Partnerships, you can actually there's like a map, and then you can find your local National Maternity Partnership. And I think it's important for people to engage. When would a woman engage with the partnership if she needed to?
Okay, so at local level, they're called just Maternity Voices Partnerships.
Okay.
And so if you want to find your local one, you can go to the National Maternity Voices website. So the National Maternity Voices is what sort of serves as a hub of a sort, really. It's an association of all the different MVP chairs, and it's there to support their work. So if you're looking for your local MVP, if you go to the National Maternity Voices website, you can search on our map for your local MVP and then get in touch with the chair of your local MVP. And the chair of your local MVP is very likely to have been somebody who has used the service before as well.
Yeah, I think, am I sharing that?
Yes.
Yes. So yeah, that's what you're talking about. So what I did is I just went on to the National Maternity Voices.org.uk, and people can go onto there. And as you can see, you've got all the different, it's just like a Google Maps, and you can just click on your own, wherever that might be. That's a Cardiff and Vale one. And you've got all the details there and an email. And that's presumably of the chair where you can, that you support, so the chairs that you support, the details there. So yeah, great, really helpful.
Yeah, and you can get in touch with your local Maternity Voice Partnership in a range of different ways. A lot of them are present on social media, so that could be Facebook. They might have a Facebook page or a Twitter page. Some of them are even on Instagram. So they're always there to listen, and they collect feedback as well through surveys. Sometimes they might have events, sort of given the pandemic. A lot of people, of course, are using virtual forums to do that. So they might have like Zoom events, where again, you can go to and give your feedback. But the whole thing is centered around making sure that the voices of those people who use the service are heard. And those voices are very key in shaping the service, so that the service is there to serve them well.
So what I don't understand is, why didn't I know about this? Do you feel like there is a difficulty in getting awareness of things like this as a standard?
It's a very, the question you've asked is a really good question. And indeed, a lot of local maternity voices really want everybody using the service to know that they're there. Some people know by seeing sort of leaflets around at the hospital when they go and see their midwives, or just through a range of adverts like that. Some people have like sort of roll-up billboards that would sort of be there in the waiting rooms. Sometimes you come across it on social media, or your friends tell you about it. But definitely more people could know about it, and we want more people to know about it, because it's a very, very important avenue to feedback and help to shape the service.
And what kind of things do you feel that are coming up for issues during COVID in general that you're seeing? And also, are there some success stories, some things that have really worked, that you've supported people through having the system of National Maternity Voices?
Yes, because I'll use myself as an example, because I'm actually a local, I chair my local maternity service as well. And I've been asking myself, trying to remember how I learned about it, and I think it must have been either from seeing a leaflet about it at the hospital before I left, when I used it initially many years ago, and then turning up to meetings and wanting to give feedback and then getting involved in that way. And when the opportunity came, when they were looking for a care, and sort of, you know, working with them and volunteering for that role and taking it on, and then making sure that we're constantly working with the midwives and other NHS staff to make sure that we sort of, you know, that people know that we're there, and that they come together, and they feel empowered, because that's the thing. One of the things that I come across is sort of people not necessarily feeling empowered to be part of their care, you know. And in my personal experience, I really found that the NVP gave me a platform, an avenue to get involved. So I sort of went from being just, you know, a pregnant mom or a new mom that I was sort of just subject to whatever my interaction was with the NHS staff that I interacted with, to taking a role in my care, to becoming a partner in my care, because I could be there in the room talking to the midwives about, you know, what is going on and what the maternity care experience is about. And it's important to know that NVPs are not necessarily able to address individual complaints. So, you know, there are the channels for that. But they listen to a range of feedback from a range of service users, and then look for the things that are coming through, and then work through those things on a local level with the NHS staff, with the people that use the service, to co-produce improvements to the service. So in terms of success stories, I mean, I think probably you know, a lot of NVP chairs will say to you that you know, that's what brought them to, you know, a range of reasons, of course, bring different people to getting involved with the local maternity service. But one of the things that I see over and over again is that empowerment. You know, service users feeling that their voice matters, their voice counts, their voice can make a difference, and they can shape the service that is there for them to work as it should work for them. You know, and that's sort of at the heart of it, really. That you don't have to just sit there and pick up with a service that's not working for you. You can feed back into it and change it.
And that's really interesting, because what's different about your services, what you do there, is that you're not just looking at the individual experience of one person. You're looking at how their experience can influence the service, the maternity service that they had experience of. So it's almost like a deeper discussion rather than a complaint. So that's the type of involvement you do. It's not, this is my care and this is what I want differently. It's, this is what my experience was, and this is what I think should happen for me or anyone else going forward. So that's a really, really interesting thing that you're doing there.
Oh yes, oh yes. Sort of, and also I would say as well, the multidisciplinary nature of it is a very key, unique selling point of the NVP, because it's very easy for things to be fragmented and everyone in their sort of little corner and their own sort of experience and sort of sit with that. But with the NVP, you're bringing together a range of experiences and sort of asking the question, how can we learn from this to make things better for everyone, regardless of all the differences that we bring to the picture? How can we make it better for everyone? How can we make sure that everyone's voice comes into that pool and for us all to work together to make it better? And for me, that is what I love about Maternity Voices Partnership. The fact that we're not just users of the service in one corner doing our own thing, and NHS staff in another corner doing their own thing. It's bringing all the people together, those who commission the service, those who provide the service, and those who use the service. I mean,
right. Yeah.
Right? And of course, as well, with those who use the service, you also have community groups who support the people who use the service, who can also come into that pool. So really, all the stakeholders in all their diversity can come together, work together to make it better. And it's an ongoing process as well. You know, you don't stop. And whilst I'm saying all these things, I must also say that, of course, it's very important that the local maternity voices partnerships are resourced, very well resourced for the work at hand, because there is a lot of work to do, and the progress of that is very much dependent on the level of resourcing, of the different MVP, because you have the chairs, but also you have a range of volunteers that give some hours every week, every month to help with collecting the feedback and sort of teasing out the themes.
It reminds me a bit of critical reflective practice, where you've got people thinking about what went wrong, because it involves the professionals as well, but it's a critical reflective practice that's done with people who experience the service, and that's really interesting, and I think really, really helpful. So it's a wonderful thing that you're involved with there, and I understand it even better than I did before. I wanted to, baby brain is kicked in again, and there's something else I wanted to ask you.
Can I comment on what you just said?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, because the way the MVP model works, you kind of have the what question, what is going on? What is the story? Not just for the one person, but what is our story? All of us, all of the different people that are using this, all the stakeholders, in all our diversity, what is our different stories? Okay, great. So let's bring it all together now and ask the question, what is working? What could be better? What needs to be better? What must be better? What can we do about it? And then the now what? What can we do about it? How do we move things forward? And it could be from as little as, we need a bowl in the bathroom. We need a holder so that it's easier. If you've just had your baby and you're going to take a shower, you need somewhere to keep your soap and a rail to hold on to much bigger things. There's sort of no limits really on what could be explored in terms of improvement. I suppose the only thing that will limit it perhaps is just the resourcing of it.
Yes. So it always comes down to resources. And I wonder, I know that the NMC is looking at doing some research and things, but it sounds like you've already got a group of people locally who could already feed into locally what should be done differently. And I think maybe tapping into some of the groups that are already there might be cheaper, maybe. And obviously it kind of, or because you're not having to filter it through sort of third parties and research things there, but also local things, everything. When I spoke to Andy Burnham last night, he was talking about devolution, keeping things local and understanding your local population. If it's done, everywhere is different. Like where I am in Bristol, it's going to be totally different to London and different maternity services there. So actually just empowering those local services to do better in a way that suits the local population that they're serving. So I think there's something in that. So yeah, it's really, really, really interesting to listen to what you're doing. And I just want to finally, now that we're in this kind of COVID state, and because normally you would bring people together on your website. I think there's a picture, and if we can bring up, of everyone in a room and they're talking, and I can imagine that's how you would normally do things in one of these sessions of seeing how you improve things. How are you doing that now? Is it all done? Is it stopped in any way? Or are you able to carry on through Zoom, or people just too busy to engage with this kind of stuff?
Again, the picture varies sort of on a local basis, and I think again, you hit on one of the wonderful things about the nature of MVPs, because you can do a lot of things nationally, but the local aspect of things remains the local aspect of things. It's the people on the ground that are being affected by local decisions in that particular hospital, right? And so how different MVPs have sort of done a range of different things to accommodate, and adjust in the situation. A lot of people are using virtual platforms. There's a lot more reliance on, social media in getting the message out, because, you can't kind of like just walk everywhere or go to baby groups in the same way as, as we used to before, because it's a different world at the moment. So a lot of people use Zoom. Teams is another one that I've heard, that I've come across people using, and indeed we use as well. In a range of ways that we come together, and that includes our coming together, networking as pairs and service user reps to support each other, but also the coming together with service users on a local basis to listen, to people's concerns, and of course the work of using surveys carries on. That has not been disrupted in the same way, because a lot of that happened online anyway before. Using online tools. So yeah, so we've adapted. Indeed, I've got to say, it is really, really impressive the amount of work that MVP chairs and their volunteer service user reps in different local MVPs, the amount of adjustment and creativity that they've brought to the situation, still pushing forward, for change and for improvement, in spite of the different challenges, that we're all under. Incredible people, really.
This is it. The more you hear about how people are responding in COVID, the more you realize within our local communities, we've just got the most amazing people, resources and skills. And maybe we just need to be funding those more than trying to do everything top down, centrally, slow, sluggish, and you lose so much money along the way to just bureaucratic stuff. So I
couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Local is better. It's more efficient. It's more effective. Of course, there is the place for the national as well. Yeah. But the local, the value and the possibilities in the local to bring about change, real good change for those on the ground using the service. Nothing can replace that.
Yes. And I love the passion and the fact that you've been there before, and it's just wonderful, your own journey as well. And how you balance it all, I don't know, but it's lovely to speak with you, Mo.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you so much. And I will tell you that I've been engaging and using the maternity service now for almost 7 years. I've been involved with MVPs for less, but it's wonderful to see yourself experiencing some of the changes that you have been part of bringing about, and that is just absolutely wonderful to see, to benefit from that change. So I don't have to wait for my children. I don't have to wait for moms ahead of me necessarily if I'm still having children. Getting involved, whether that's giving feedback or volunteering or taking on the role of a chair, but getting involved in whatever way that one is able to, it really does make a difference. Really does make a difference.
Oh, that's just wonderful to hear. And it's lovely to hear that things are improving. And that's a lovely, I think, note to end on, that and I think this whole thing of everyone we've spoken to, everyone has just got it. Everybody knows what needs to be done. People like yourself are already living it, breathing it, experiencing it, and doing a great job. And I love your enthusiasm and your positivity. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know, like me, you've got kids and getting them down to bed. Mine are still running around somewhere. Ugh, it's a nightmare. But, thank you so much, and take care.
Thank you. And you're doing a great job too. Thank you so much for hosting this panel. Thank you very much.
Bye, Mary.
Bye. Thank you.
So there we go. Bit of a longer one tonight. I hope you didn't mind, and I hope you stuck with it. And a lot of you will be watching this back, because that's how we tend to get most of our views. But yeah, that was really lovely and fantastic panel. And it was really good to see that even though there lots of negativity out there because of the statistics, but actually on the ground, a lot of people are seeing how it needs to change. You've got some fantastic inspirational local groups, and actually there's more maybe we need to be aware of, and absolutely more we need to fund. and fund differently. It might not be we need more, we just need to fund the right things in local areas. So hopefully you have all got some new people you want to follow. We've been putting up people's Twitter handles and websites. So if you want to know more information, then do follow up with all of that. And of course, you can rewind this back and catch up on anything you missed if you joined us late. So that's us for this evening. Thank you very much. And we will be going live again. I'm not quite sure when. I'm going to try and fit another one in the end of January. More of a discussion, because what I'm hoping to do is more like news and commentary on what's been going on in social care. So I'm just speaking with a few people who we've interviewed before, asking if they want to, I haven't actually asked them this, but I will ask them if they want to guest host, because obviously I'm going to be a bit busy in a few months' time. But I think just to keep things going, I think it'll be quite interesting. So you're not always seeing me. But yeah, so that might be coming up. So we've got some new guests as well that we're hoping to do that with. Obviously, I'm still looking at doing the webinar on vaccination. So that's getting a host of guests, a panel of experts from diverse backgrounds. And we've got several GPs just trying to coordinate a date. And we've got a virologist, immunologist as well, and a few clinicians. So if you join into that, you can ask them any question about the vaccine, because what we have found is that one thing that I feel really confident about in having the vaccination is having your questions directly answered by people, rather than the kind of you should have it because it's good for society, it's good for yourself. But some people really just have legitimate questions that they've got no one to ask and get answers from, or they're finding answers on Google or Facebook, and you can never be too sure of these things. So we are trying to get together a panel. So if you do want to know when that will go live, your best bet is to subscribe and to click the bell, because you'll get a notification when we go live if you're on YouTube. If you're on Facebook, then do like our page. And I think that's pretty much everything, all the updates. So thank you ever so much for joining, and we will hopefully see you soon. So thank you very much.